were looking for a place to live. But every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There were sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles. So they flew on and on. So there's the pictures. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island in it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. Do you see the island? Nice little island in the pond. What are they doing? What are they doing? Silly ducks. The next morning, they fished for their breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond. They didn't find much. And just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people, and there was a man sitting on its back. Good morning, quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer. But the people on the boat threw peanuts in the water. So the Mallards followed them all around the pond and got another breakfast, better than the first. Not bad. I like this place, said Mrs. Mallard as they climbed out on the bank and waddled along. Why don't we build a nest and raise our ducklings right on this pond? There are no foxes and no turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better? Good, said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place that suited her. What do you think? Is it nice? No? Uh-oh. But, uh-oh. What do you think? Look out! Squawked Mrs. Mallard all of a dither. You'll get run over! And when she got her breath, she added, this is no place for babies with all those horrid things rushing about. We have to look somewhere else. Mr. Mallard goes, wah! So they flew over Beacon Hill. There's the State House. That's that big round dome. And round the State House, but there was no place there. And they looked in Louisburg Square, but there was no water there. And then they flew over the Charles River. See that? And there's an island there. That's better, quacked Mr. Mallard. That island looks like a nice quiet place, and it's only a little way from the public garden. Yes, said Mrs. Mallard, remembering the peanuts. That looks just the right place to hatch ducklings. And so they chose a quiet, cozy spot among the bushes near the water and settled down to build their nest. And only just in time, for now they were beginning to molt, and all their old wing feathers started to drop out, and they would not be able to fly again until the new ones grew in. And they have a nice nest. See the nice nest they have? And they can drink their water and find their fish. You know what they call that bridge? They call that bridge the salt and pepper bridge because they look like salt and pepper shakers. Isn't that funny? Bet you never knew that. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs on the nest, she couldn't, oh, I missed a page. I missed an important page. Of course, they could swim. They didn't have their feathers, but they could swim. And one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and there they met a policeman named Michael. Michael fed them peanuts, and after that, the Mallards called on Michael every day. See, I told you it was an important page. There's Michael. And there they are eating their peanuts. Michael looks like a friendly guy, right? He looks like a very friendly policeman. He gives them peanuts. When I lived near school, there was a policeman who used to give my dog bones. But I don't think his name was Michael. Here we go. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs on the nest, she couldn't go visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on the eggs to keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water or to have her lunch or to count the eggs to make sure they were all there. How many eggs are there? Can you count them all? I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, good, they're all still there. Whew, I was worried. One day, the ducklings hatched out. First came Jack, and then Cack, and then Lack, and Mack, and Knack, and Whack, and Pack, and Quack. Whew. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were busting with pride. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them very busy. Okay, whoop, where'd they go? There they all are. Just like your families are very busy taking care of all of you. Look at all those babies. Could you imagine how busy they'd be trying to take care of 8 of you? Oh, how crazy that would be. Wow. Wow. There were 7 in my family. I think that if there were 8, that would have been one too many. So Mrs. Mallard and Mr. Mallard, they had a lot. That's a lot. One day, Mr. Mallard decided he'd like to take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like further on. So off he set. I'll meet you in a week in the public garden. He quacked over his shoulder. Take good care of the ducklings. Don't you worry, said Mrs. Mallard. I know all about bringing up children. And she did. So he's saying goodbye. See you later. And she is taking care of all her babies. And she taught them how to swim and dive. Look at them grow so fast. And she taught them to walk in a line. Look at them all walking sort of in a line. Oh, hurry up. Gotta catch up. To come when they were called and to keep a safe distance from bikes and scooters and things with wheels. And when at last she felt perfectly satisfied with them, she said one morning, "Come along, children, follow me." Are they following along nicely? I hope so. Don't want anybody to get lost. Before you could wink an eyelash, Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack fell into line just as they had been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way into the water and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. Whew. There, they waded ashore and waddled along until they came to the highway. I don't think they counted on this. There they go. Look at those silly cars. You see those cars? Do cars look like that? What old-fashioned cars? Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Uh-oh. Honk, honk. Oh, no. Quack, went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 went Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by and honking, and Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings kept right on quack, 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 quack. They made such a noise that Michael came running, waving his arms and blowing his whistle. Here he comes, Michael to the rescue. Whew, I was worried there. He planted himself in the center of the road and raised one hand to stop the traffic and then beckoned with the other the way policemen do for Mrs. Mallard to cross over. Everybody see that? He stopped all the cars. Whew, that was close. Amanda. As soon as Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings were safe on the other side and on their way down Mount Vernon Street, Michael rushed back to his police booth. There he goes, running as fast as he can, and there they go, walking down the street. See him? Going down the sidewalk. He called Clancy at headquarters and said, "There's a family of ducks walking down the street." Clancy said, "Family of what?" "Ducks," yelled Michael. "Send a police car, quick." See, he's in. You know what that is? That's a phone booth. He doesn't have a cell phone. He had to go dial the phone. We don't do that anymore. Told you it's an old-fashioned book. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mallard had reached the corner bookshop and turned onto Charles Street with Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack all marching in line behind her. And there they are at the bookstore, watching all the ducks go by. Everyone stared. An old lady from Beacon Hill said, "Isn't it amazing?" And the man who swept the street said, "Well, now, ain't that nice?" And when Mrs. Mallard heard them, she was so proud. She tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra swing in her waddle. Look how proud she is. So proud. When they came to the corner of Beacon Street, there was a police car with 4 policemen that Clancy had sent from headquarters. The policemen held back the traffic so Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings could march across the street. Look at that. All traffic stopped. Where are they? Here they are. Here they are, marching across the street. Everybody see that? Such a sight. Right into the public garden. inside the gate, they all turned around to say thank you to the policeman, and the policeman smiled and waved goodbye. Bye-bye. Everybody wave goodbye to the policeman. Bye-bye. Thank you. When they reached the pond and swam across to the little island, there was Mr. Mallard waiting for them, just as he had promised. Can everybody find Mr. Mallard? Where's he hanging out? There he is. So they're swimming right to him. Yay! The ducklings liked the new island so much that they decided to live there. All day long, they follow the swan boats and eat the peanuts. There they are. There's the swan boat. And when night falls, they swim to their little island to go to sleep. There they go. And hopefully someday soon, this summer, hopefully we can all take a little trip and go into the city, and you can go to the frog pond and play in the water and go see the ducks and see the swan boats and throw peanuts for the ducklings. Let's hope. Let's hope. Okay. Hi, Amanda. All right. So everybody like that story? We have time for one more? Okay. The other story is Ocean Meets Sky. Okay. And I picked this one because I like to sail. And it's a little book about sailing, and it's a book about a boy who builds a sailboat and goes for a trip to try and find where the ocean meets the sky. And it's by two brothers, two illustrators who call themselves the Fan Brothers, because that's their last name, Fan. And even the end papers of the inside of a book, these are called the end papers. And look at those clouds. Aren't those beautiful? And for those of us who went to Abbott, there's a rabbit there. So lots of special meanings here. I'm going to take the extra cover off the book for now because it gets in my way. So the open page has Finn and his mother at the ocean. And see this decoration here? This is called a compass rose, okay? And it points to the north, okay? It's a compass rose and it points to the north, okay? So it always shows you where north is, where you are in the world. And that's Finn. And that picture there is Finn's grandfather. See the picture of Finn's grandfather? Finn lived by the sea. And the sea lived by him. It's a good day for sailing, his grandfather would have said. Excuse me. There's Finn with his grandfather. He's remembering his grandfather. Finn remembered Grandpa's voice, telling him stories about a place far away where ocean meets sky. His grandfather would have been 90 years old today. This is a great, look at there's a zeppelin, there's a blimp or a zeppelin up in the window, and a tree, and the ocean outside, and a ship in the bottle, and shells. Just wonderful, wonderful place. To honor him, Finn built a boat fit for a long journey, one they had planned together. So there's Finn building the boat. What a great boat, huh? What a wonderful boat. Wonderful sail. Boat building was hard work, and Finn took a short nap below decks. It's a roomy boat, too. When he awoke, he felt the boat rocking gently beneath him. He's awake. The journey had begun. Look at the clouds. What do you see in those clouds? I see Grandpa's pipe. I see an elephant. I see a ship. I see a whale. I see a bird. And I see Finn in his ship. I didn't think the open sea would feel so lonely, Finn said after some time. You see him rocking away. That caught the attention of a big golden fish. Look at the mustache on that fish. Remind you of anyone? Does that remind you of Grandpa's mustache? Do you know where ocean meets sky? Finn asked the fish. It's high and low and as deep as the sea, said the fish, in a low voice that made Finn's boat shake. It's up and down and very far, but I can show you the way. And there's Finn in the boat, talking with the fish. He followed the golden fish to the Library Islands, where 100 bookish birds were roosting. Look at those birds. See any birds you recognize? There's the fishtail. Kind of hard to do this. I see a toucan, I see an owly owl, I see a kingfisher. One of the books in here, so look at that book. That book is being read by a bird. How silly is that? One of the books in there is Moby Dick, which is a book about a whale. Then they explored an island of giant shells. And Finn is climbing on a shell. Look at that. How fun is that? Wouldn't that be fun to be able to climb inside one of those shells? That would be really cool. I would love to be able to do that. And crossed a sea of moon jellies dancing. That would be cool. I always like the moon jellies because they're a kind of jellyfish that Even though they've got big, long tentacles, they don't necessarily sting you. And they glow in the ocean. But then Finn's eyes filled with wonder. Had he finally reached the place of his grandfather's stories? The magical place where ocean meets sky? Excuse me. Look at this. The jellies are going into the sky. And there are ships and things in the sky. Am I there? His boat began to lift from the water, or had the water fallen away? Look at that. The jellies are going up into the sky. What a magical book. Wait till you see this. Whoa. He's right up by the eye of a ginormous whale. Wow. That's amazing. And look. All these things. See how he's up by the whale? And then the golden fish, and there's ships and fish and balloons and more ships and ships that look like balloons and balloons that look like ships. And holy moly, look at all that. What a magical place. What a magical place. And there's even more. And there's even more. I see a Chinese dragon and more ships and more and more and more. And I see Moby Dick. Remember I told you Moby Dick was in the White Whale was the book. And I see a giant steamship and a castle and an octopus. And look at that giant blimp. Oh my goodness. There is so much here to look at. I wish we could spend all day just looking at this one picture. There's so much there. The golden fish swam toward the moon. And Finn followed. He wanted to say goodbye. There's the fish swimming toward the moon. And there's Finn. Who does the moon look like? Does the moon look like grandfather? Oh my goodness, does that moon look like grandfather? Smiling. How nice is that? How nice is that? Grandfather's blowing a wind or blowing a kiss. And what is coming out? Look at all those fish. Those look like flying fish to me. I've seen flying fish. And this kind of fish, these are really cool. These are mahi. These are mahi. They're also known as dolphin fish. They're not like the dolphins that you see. They're not like flipper. They're mahi. And they're full of color. They're so full of color. They're really beautiful. Lots of different fish. And this kind of fish right here, that's a triggerfish. But the flying fish are my favorite. He had so many questions. Finn had so many questions, but he heard a voice calling from far, far away. So he's going back through the clouds, drifting, drifting. Finn, wake up, it's time for dinner, said his mother. I made Grandpa's dumplings. And Finn looked out across the sea to that magical place far away, where ocean meets sky. It had been a good day for sailing. Who's he saying goodbye to? Is he saying goodbye to his grandfather? Smiling. And this is dedicated to our fellow voyagers, Lizzie, Christian, and Justin, with special thanks to Mietimo and Mr. Sky. And again, I told you the end papers are sometimes really cool. I see an owl and a whale and a ship. Anyway, that's ocean meets sky. And when I was an oceanographer, I used to go out on the boats, and the flying fish at night would come and they'd sail along with us along the boat. And sometimes they'd land, and their fins were like wings, and they'd jump out of the water, and sometimes they'd land on the boat, and then the fins would come along the sides of their bodies, and then you could pick them up and you could scoot them back into the water, because you didn't want them, because they didn't live if they stayed out like that. So you'd throw them back in the water and they'd sort of jump right back out and almost say thank you. And that was always kind of nice. So I always liked the flying fish, because you could sort of rescue them. Anyway, thank you all. That was fun.
Thank you, Betsy Coward Miller.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
That was really fun.
Great story. Thanks, stories.
Let's leave the meeting.
Say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
I can please
It was really fun.
Hi, Noreen.
Twice it.
wait for chocolate.